بسم الله الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام ونعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So this section will just recap from the previous session. He talks about the three things, ثلاثة أشياء تبنى عليها السعادة, three things that upon which the contentment, the heart's contentment is built upon. So he says تمام السعادة مبني على ثلاثة أشياء قوة الغضب قوة الشهوة قوة العلم. So complete joy, complete felicity is built upon three things: the power of the irascible soul, the power of the desiring or the concupiscent soul, and the power of the intellect or ilm. فيحتاج أن يكون أمرها متوسطا. It's important, it's necessary that all these three are balanced out. So he's not negating, or he's not saying that the concupiscent aspect or the irascible aspect is to be discarded or is to be suppressed completely. He says that it's important. They are part and parcel of your being, and they are necessary to keep you healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. So, but it's important that they are kept in balance. That also includes the aql. The aql cannot override the will of the heart. And that goes into a bit of an aqidah matter, but I'll talk about that later on because he mentions it again. لئلا تزيد قوة الشهوة فتخرجه إلى الرخص فيهلك. So if the concupiscent aspect is not, if it increases too much, it can make you fall into, or it can cause you to fall into leniency. It's just let go and it's no longer in control. It goes too much into leniency. So there's no discipline as far as the being is concerned, and that can destroy you. أو تزيد قوة الغضب فتخرجه إلى الجموع فيهلك. Or if the irascible aspect is just left out of control, the individual can descend into defiancy and disobedience, and that can destroy you. Rather, that will destroy you in any aspect. You get into too much leniency, it will destroy you. You get too defiant, or you just get defiant and disobey the command of Allah. I mean, Iblis, taking Iblis as an example, his defiance was very simple if you think about it. The great sin that he committed compared to what most people do commit in the general aspect, it was really just a defiance out of his own arrogance, and that was enough to get him banishment from the heavens. So even the slightest measure of it will cause you to be destroyed. فإذا توست القوتان بإشارة قوة العلم دل على طريق الهداية. If they are balanced and they're kept in moderation, these two powers, by the command and the power of the aql, of ilm, and the aql's greatest strength is ilm. It's not its own rationality. It's not what it itself can figure out. It's what it learns and acquires. Then the being or the individual will be able to follow the path of guidance. وَكَذَلِكَ الْغَضَبْ إِذَا زَادَ سَهْلُ. If likewise, if the ghadab, so in the extreme senses where it is not kept in control, if it increases in its aggression, then it will result in that defiance and rebellious attitude. And that is what Iblis did. He rebelled against his Lord's command. But it can also fall the other way. It can become too easy, too lenient by itself. It becomes deficient in its power. So if it does that, then وَكَذَلِكَ الْغَضَبْ إِذَا زَادَ سَهْلُ عَلَيْهِ الضَّرْبُ وَالْقَتْلُ. If it is left unchecked, it will result in violence and damage and ruination and murder and fighting and just aggression in general. وَإِذَا نَقَصَ. If it becomes deficient in power, ذَهَبْتُ الْغَيْرَ وَالْحَمِيَّةِ فِي الدِّينِ وَالدُّنْيَا. If it becomes deficient, it is also a bad thing, because then the individual loses that zeal and that passion in matters pertaining the deen as well as just existence in the dunya. So even the deficiency is a bad thing. Too much is bad, and too less is bad. It has to be somewhere in the middle. وَإِذَا تَوَسَّتَ كَانَ الصَّبْرُ وَالشَّجَاعَةُ وَالْحِكْمَةُ. If it is kept in balance, then what the individual is going to have is this sabr, this temperance, this courage, shaja'a, and hikmah, prudence. And these are known as the cardinal virtues that we spoke about. They are known as ummahatul fada'il, right? The 4 cardinal virtues, which are hikmah, shaja'a, and iffa or sabr. And then when the 3 are kept in balance, then the 4th one is manifested as adala, as justice unto the self and unto others. وَكَذَلِكَ الشَّهْوَةِ إِذَا زَادَتْ. And likewise, when the shahwa is just left uncontrolled, it is just left to do whatever it wants, and it increases. كَانَ الْفِسْقُ وَالْفُجُورُ. It's going to go into profligacy and into immorality. So, taking Iblis as an example again in Surah Al-Kahf, ayah number 50, he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. When Allah told all the malaika, the angels, to prostrate before Adam, they all prostrated except Iblis. And he says, كَانَ مِنَ الْجِنِّ. He was from the jinn. فَفَسَقَ عَنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. He transgressed. This fisq is this profligacy, or getting into this liberal attitude, just being lax about everything, and saying, oh, it's no big deal, it's not that big of an issue, we can just get away with it, that kind of an attitude. And that results also in immorality, because if things don't seem like a big deal to you, then you're just going to keep on doing them, and then eventually you fall into immoral states. وَإِن نَقَصَتْ. If it is deficient, if it is lacking in strength, كَانَ الْعَجْزُ وَالْفُتُورُ. Then you're going to be weak, lazy, and incompetent. That you have an inability to do things. You don't have a drive to push you forward. A complete lack of interest. إِن تَوَسَّتَتْ. If it is balanced, if all these are balanced, كَانَ الْعِفَّةُ وَالْقَنَاعَةُ وَأَمْثَلَ ذَلِكَ. Then you will have this moderation, this moderate satisfaction in your life. And that is going to free your heart up to seek out the path that it was meant to seek out, wherein it will find its true contentment, which is in ma'rifatullah. Is there any question till there?
Yeah.
No.
What was... Oh, go ahead, Hamza.
No, I was just going to say I had not.
Okay.
Oh.
Alex?
What was the 4, you said cardinal values? I got hikmah, what's shuja?
So they're called cardinal virtues in, I believe, in Christian theology specifically, and in Western morals and ethics. Ummahatul fada'il, the mother of virtues, or the 4 primary. So there's hikmah, which is wisdom or prudence, and that's from there you get hukuma or jurisprudence, right? And then there is shuja'a, which is courage or bravery. It's also fortitude, and the negative aspect. So the if it is left unchecked, the hikmah is actually a component of the aql. Right? So if the aql executes its understanding correctly, if it analyzes correctly and interprets correctly, then the heart can make the right decision, right? So that wisdom is enacted, because knowledge, after the learning process, should endow one with wisdom. So if you didn't acquire knowledge properly, then you're not going to be able to apply the decisions in the right way. So if it is left unchecked, then if it is deficient in its power, then it will result in ignorance, in jahiliyyah. And if it is left out of control, in other words, the intellect is no longer subservient to the heart, and it can do whatever it wants, think whatever whatever it wants, it can start deviating, of course, into irrationality, into illogical aspects, things that don't make sense, ideas that are far-fetched. And this is one of the things that the Mu'tazilite were they were criminalized for, rightfully so, because they placed the intellect as a judge over religion. They place reason as judgment over revelation. In other words, they subjected the Quran to the logic of the intellect instead of accepting what the Quran was saying as the judge for the intellect, for reason. And so they deviated off for that reason. The shuja'a, which is courage, if it is left unchecked and out of control, it will result in this foolhardiness, reactive, agitative, aggressive state. So somebody who has this aspect as their negative quality, they're very easily triggered. You push their button and they react immediately, and they don't even know why they react. A lot of people fall into this category. They just want to argue for sake of argument. They don't even know why they're arguing. It's just almost instinctive for them that somebody says something and they start getting into an argumentative mode. And if it's deficient, then it results in cowardice. And the third portion is, so that was hikmah, shuja'a, and then iffa is the third cardinal value, virtue.
With the ayn?
Yeah, if iffa with the ayn fa, and then the closed ta. It's synonymous with sabr. Yeah, but iffa is more fitting because it means chastity or abstinence. So you really still your desire. You control yourself from indulging. This is best tested in Ramadan, when you have to really face every desire and abstain from indulging in it. The training for this is trained mostly during fasting. The training for the anger, for the ghadab, is done during salah. In my view, some scholars say in fasting as well. But in my view, salah is the best weapon against your anger. So, and like the Prophet ﷺ said, if you're angry and you're standing, sit down. If you're sitting, lie down. If you still can't control it, do wudu. If you still can't control it, do 2 rakat and pray. And it gets rid of the anger. So salah is really the best solution for getting or controlling the anger portion. And Sawm is the best training for controlling the desires. So if the desire is too lenient or it's too deficient, then it results in leniency and laziness and slothfulness, right? Which is one of the deadly sins. And if it is out of control, then the person is impatient, is no longer able to control themselves when it comes to these carnal desires, and then they get into profligacy and immorality. But when all three of them are balanced, then you have adala. And adala is justice, but it can also go in the negative side when you do injustice.
You said, what was the word for jurisprudence? Hukuma?
Hukuma, yeah. Hukuma is like, in Urdu you say hukumat, like the law, the justice system.
Ahkam means general rulings.
Yeah, ahkam would be general rulings, yeah.
And then fiqh would be jurisprudence.
Well, fiqh actually, it's been turned into jurisprudence. I don't like that translation of fiqh. Fiqh is actually understanding the sharia. It's not the jurisprudent aspect. The hukum is the jurisprudent aspect. So the faqih is somebody who understands the sharia and can advise you. But the hakim or the qadi is the one who is going to conduct the actual case in court. The fuqaha are people of understanding. So you can study fiqh and you don't necessarily have to be a judge or somebody who resolves jurisprudent issues. But you can study the fiqh and you would be called a faqih. And you would be a person who has understood the sharia of Allah. Because the sharia is not only meant for as far as jurisprudent matters, like what to do with inheritance, or what are the laws of marriage and divorce, or what to do when somebody has committed a crime. That's not what the Sharia is only about. It's really about every moment and every aspect of your life. So it's not limited to jurisprudence. In fact, Ghazali makes a complaint about this in the Ihya. He complains that people have, at his time, he's making this complaint that people have reduced fiqh to jurisprudence. He makes a complaint about it. Okay, so then the next section is أحوال القلب مع أساكيره. It's a brief section, but there's a lot of stuff involved because he's going to explain 4 sets of qualities, and the reason why he's explaining them is for you to examine yourself and figure out which category you fall under. So this is kind of like a rubric with which you're gonna sort of evaluate yourself. So he says, اعلم أن للقلب مع أساكره أحوالا وصفاتا. That the heart and its troops have got states and have qualities. So there are certain state you can be under, and there are certain qualities you possess. The states are either you are in the irascible state, or you are in the you're in the concupiscent state, you're in the intellective state, or you are in the just state, the tranquil state, which is the adala, that's the just state. The sifat, which are the qualities, are what he's going to explain here. بعدها يسمى أخلاق السوء وبعدها أخلاق الحسن. Some of these are vile qualities, what you would call vice or evil qualities, bad qualities, and some of these are good qualities or virtuous qualities, characteristics. فبأخلاق الحسنة يبلغ درجة السعادة. It's through the good qualities and characteristics that you reach the maqam or the degree, the daraja of contentment, of true happiness. وبالأخلاق السيئات هلاكه وخروجه للشقاء. And it is through the vice and the bad qualities, characteristics, that you destroy yourself and you descend into this state of damnation. So overall, there are 2 destinations you can really acquire. In philosophy, we have something called the problem of identity and the problem of destiny, which is essentially what human beings are trying to figure out. And these are related to the 2 components of time and being. So Heidegger wrote his book Time and Being, but he wrote it as far as his philosophy was concerned. This is something that religion expands on and delivers to mankind, because the solution to these 2 problems of identity and destiny, meaning who am I and where am I going, what's the way ahead. Because you can either think that there's nothing awaiting me, I'm gonna die and that's the end of me, there's no more existence after that, or there's something that is awaiting you. And the fitrah is such that it recognizes that there's something awaiting you there, but it doesn't know how to make sense of it. What is it exactly that I'm heading towards? That's the destiny. Understanding time is what helps you understand your destiny, because you are a journeyman through time. You're not in motion through space, existentially. You arrived into this world at a certain time, and then you're going to exit from this world at a certain time. So time is really the marker for your destination, because you're going to leave at a certain time marker. That's your destination in time. Where are you headed towards? And your problem of identity is understanding who you are. In other words, what's your purpose of existence? Why do you exist? That's your identity. You figure out your purpose of existence, and then you answer. That's how you'll answer that question. So the destination here is, you can either leave this world as somebody who has achieved angelic qualities or somebody who has achieved demonic qualities. This is your process of becoming. You either become something that is praiseworthy or something that is blameworthy. Something that is beautiful, right? Or something that is just damned and will be damned for all of eternity. This is really all there is to it in a nutshell. So he's saying that with the good qualities, the good characteristics, you will be able to attain that beautiful maqam of husn. And with the bad qualities and bad characteristics, you're going to face damnation. It's as simple as that. There's nothing complicated to it, right? Everyone understands this, even if they didn't study religion or they're not religious. They know that if I'm a good person, I'm going to get good in the end. If I'm a bad person, I'm going to get bad in the end. If they're smart enough, that is to say. وَهَذِهِ كُلُّهَا تَبْلُغُ أَرْبَعَةَ أَجْنَاسٍ. So all these, they can be categorized, or they can be broken up into four chief categories, four genuses. Akhlaq al-shayateen, the demonic characteristics. Akhlaq al-bahaim, the bestial characteristics, or ruminants. Ruminants are like livestock, for example, are called ruminants. The word comes from the Latin word ruminare, which means to just chew over and over again. So it's just consumer, because that's what livestock do generally. They don't really do anything else. They just eat and they just copulate and reproduce. That's essentially what livestock do. So this is the bestial quality of just keep consuming and copulating, consume and copulate. This is basically the society we see today. That's not been guided. And he's going to talk about the guidance portion. Somebody who doesn't want to be guided or is not being guided is just going to resort to one of these qualities or one of these categories. And so what we have is a consumer society driven by materialism, right? They just want to buy, consume, eat, consume, copulate, party, have fun. At the end of the day, this is who they rationalize is the purpose of the human being. That's why we're here, according to them, to be distracted, to entertain ourselves. And then this group passes and then the next group comes in and does the same thing. And then we eventually die in some cosmic collision by a meteorite or something or the other, the way the dinosaurs were killed. That's their ratification. That's their conclusion, their great academic conclusion. And then akhlaq al-saba'a, which is the predatory characteristics. The characteristic that is like a wolverine, right? It's just rage. It's just monstrous. All it wants to do is kill and hurt and break and burn, and that's it. It's just anger. There's nothing else there. And then akhlaq al-malaika, the angelic characteristics. So he's going to explain each of these categories and he's going to point it out to you and say, where do you see yourself? This is not something you air out in public, obviously, but this is something you reflect upon yourself and you be honest with yourself. Where exactly do I fit in? Am I here? And if I'm here, how do I get from here to elsewhere? So he says, فَأَعْمَالُ السُّوء. As for the vile characteristics, the vile deeds, the bad deeds, مِنْ أَكْلِ وَالشُّرْبِ وَالنَّوْمِ وَالنِّكَاحِ هِيَ أَخْلَاقُ الْبَهَائِمِ. As for those bestial aspects, just overindulgence, just overeating, overdrinking, right? Oversleeping, laziness, slothfulness, just copulating. These are all from the bestial qualities. And it doesn't take a genius to see and look at reality and say, well, that's what beasts do. So if these are the things where you take pleasure in, do you want to remain in that category or do you want to move from that? وَكَذَلِكَ أَعْمَالُ الْغَضَبِ. As for the irascible qualities, the irascible deeds, مِنَ الضَّرْبِ وَالْقَتْلِ وَالْخُصُومَةِ هِيَ أَخْلَاقُ السَّبَعَةِ. From beating and striking and hitting and fighting and quarreling, arguing, just pointless debating, reacting, shouting, yelling, sloganeering, all these things. These are all from the predatory qualities. So if this is what you're doing, then this is the category you are in right now. وَكَذَلِكَ أَعْمَالُ النَّفْسِ. As for the egoistic deeds, self. Now here nafs he's using with reference to the self, not the soul as the body, the self. وَهِيَ الْمَكْرُ وَالْحِلْيَةُ وَالْغِشُّ وَغَيْرِ ذَلِكَ هِيَ أَخْلَاقُ الشَّيَاطِينِ. Such as deception and double dealing and ruse and stratagem and plotting and planning, tampering, cheating, sabotaging, these kinds of actions, these are all from demonic qualities. So if you find yourself doing that, then you're in this category. وَكَذَلِكَ أَعْمَالُ الْعَقْلِ. The highest of that, likewise. The highest of this is the aql, the actions of the aql. التي هي الرحمة والعلم والخير هي أخلاق الملائكة. And notice that he's saying rahmah first. Mercy is its quality. He's not talking about aql in the modern understanding of the word aql as mind, because it's not, now it's understood as something that's just a cognitive process, right? Analytics, mathematics, quantitative, just statistics and data and information. This is what aql does. This is their definition. He's talking about aql in its true aspect of comprehension. And in the Mishkat al-Anwar, he gives a beautiful disposition on the aql. He calls it the light, the misbah. In Ayatul Nur, ayah 24 of Surah An-Nur, he says, Al-Misbah, this misbah is the lamp of the intellect. Its quality is rahmah, it's mercy, and ilm, it's not, and knowledge, true knowledge, and khair, to do good. Because the choice, if you remember when we talked about free will, and we'll expand more on that inshallah as we go along. Doing evil is not a choice. Evil is a capitulation. It's giving in to the evil. But good is a choice. And so when you make the choice, you are exerting free will. When you make the choice to do good. And so doing good is a quality of the mind, because it chooses to do good. But the being doesn't choose to do evil, it gives in. Means the aql submits to the shahwa and the ghadab, rather than the aql being the one in command. وَهِيَ أَخْلَاقُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, these are the angelic qualities. The aql يعقل النفس عن الهوى. The intellective aspect, it intellects against, it restrains the soul from caprice, from its whims. It restrains the soul from giving in to its whims, because its whims lead it to evil. That's the giving in, that's the capitulation to evil. The higher intellect, the higher soul, is the one that is in control. Is there any question till there?
What was you said 4 characters, the demonic, the beastly, the egotistic, and the misbah, is that it?
Okay, so the 4 that he has mentioned are the akhlaq al-shaytan, the demonic, and what he's saying is that the egoistic aspects, those things that fuel your ego, they are related to this demonic aspect. So they are the shaitaniya. And then there is bahaim, which is bestial, and that's related to your desires, to the shahwa. And then there is as-saba'a, which is predatory, and that's related to the ghadab. And then the higher one is the aql, and that's related to the malaika, the qualities of the malaika. Get it?
So it's a shaitan, mahaim,
Bahaim, bahaim,
saba'a, and aql.
and aql, yeah, or malaika.
So the ego, the desire, and the predatory was the saba'a.
Saba'a is predatory, yeah.
Is that the plotting, the planning one?
No, that's like rage and killing and striking and argumentative, getting hot-headed. Yeah, that's the predatory behavior. The deceiving, double dealing, the strategic planning and plotting, right? That's nafsiya actually. That's the self. That's the ego that does that. And that's a demonic quality, because the demons do that.
What is irascible, and how do you spell concupiscent?
Concupiscent, yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. Concupiscent. These were terms that were used by earlier philosophers. Ghazali has his own terms. He's going to explain those in the next section. He calls it kalb, khinzir, shaitan, and malak. The dog soul, the pig soul, and he also calls it sheikh. The angelic soul, he also calls it the sage soul, or the sheikh. And then the shaitan, the demonic. We actually spoke about that. I did a separate session for the ladies, because they had a specific issue that they wanted to discuss in private. But I used an example. I think I gave Abu Hamza an example as well. Remember about Ummi Musa? Yeah. Sorry, I have a call, so my voice is not coming out properly. About Ummi Musa in ayah number.
Yes, Ummi Musa,
and Allah can intervene whenever He wants, and just strengthen your heart at that moment when you need it the most.
Yes, yes.
And it's phenomenal. We never really think about this, but if we actually do, you'll be surprised how much your Lord actually keeps you together. You would actually cry if you thought about it. I do. I know I cry sometimes when I'm praying Salah and I finish and I just think about stuff. I break into. I just feel that emotion stirring me as like Subhanallah. Just it's Allah who has saved me today.
This whole, like every single day, it's like Allah's trying to teach you something, and if you pay attention, you'll get it. And some days it's like it's this. You see the same thing. It's like, oh, was there nothing there? But then the suburb. That's where the suburb comes in. And then some days he just hits you with something like, today has been that day, and like what you just said about the past hour, just oh man, my demonic and my beastly self were like ganging up on my upper, and it was just like I now understand it, and it just makes so much like perfect sense.
Alhamdulillah.
Subhanallah.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so any other question from that previous section, or should we proceed? Okay, okay, inshallah. Any question from the lady side? Okay, let's proceed. If there's anything, then I'll address it when it comes up. So in this section, he's talking about he's now, since he mentioned the good qualities and the bad qualities, he's going to differentiate between the two. He's going to expand more a bit on that. And then, so what he's doing is he's giving you this map work or a formula. He's saying these are the 4 categories, and then these are the qualities. Each of these categories has got goods and bads. So there are some aspects you do need to get angry. You do need to get aggressive in certain instances. Some instances, your desires are functional. They are necessary because you have to eat, so you'll desire food. You desire good food, right? And also, as far as deen is concerned, you desire beautification, because you want to see the jamal of Allah's creation. You don't want to just see ugliness everywhere. So that's a desire. That's a good desire. You want to learn. You want to study more. That's a good desire. You want to go for Hajj. That's a good desire. So there are good desires. There are certain instances where the emotions are necessary. So there are good qualities and bad qualities. 2 sides to everything, right? Likewise, the human soul, the self, has got 2 sides. It's got the higher praiseworthy side and the lower blameworthy side. And in the end, you become either one of 2. You become a blameworthy person or a praiseworthy person. So he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ فِي جِلْدِ ابْنِ آدَمَ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْيَاء. Know that the skin or the shell, the composition of the human being, of the son of Adam, has got 4, is made up of 4 things. This is an interesting one, jild, and I'll get to that later on, what it actually entails. He says, Al-Kalbu, Al-Khinziru, Al-Shaytanu, Al-Malak. And in some aspects, he calls it Al-Shaykh. So this is the dog, the pig, the demon, and the angel, or the sage, the Shaykh, or the saint. The sage is more fitted as because saints are usually awliya. So a sheikh, in this case, somebody who is wise, right? So somebody who executes his intellective abilities correctly, properly, in a disciplined way, is considered to be a wise person. So then he makes a clarification here. وَالْكَلْبُ مَذْمُومٌ فِي صِفَاتِهِ. The dog is only blameworthy in its attributes. وَلَيْسَ بِمَذْمُومٌ fi suratihi. It's not blameworthy in its form. The dog is a creation of Allah. It's a beautiful creation because it is Allah's creation. But it is blameworthy in its attributes. When it's barking and it's growling and it's drooling and it's biting and it's gnawing and it's angry all the time, that's when it is blameworthy. وَكَذَلِكَ الشَّيْطَانُ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ. Likewise also the shaitan and the malaika. ذَمُّهُمْ وَمَدْعُهُمْ فِي صِفَاتِهِمْ. They are blameworthy and they are praiseworthy. Blameworthy goes to the shaitan and the praiseworthy goes to the malaika in their attributes. وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ فِي سُورِهِمْ وَخَلَقِهِمْ. They're not blameworthy in their forms. Allah has created them in that form. Even the demons, for that matter, the jinn, the shayateen, they've been created in a form, and because Allah has created them, they are beautiful in their own aspect. But the demons, the shayateen, they are blameworthy in their attributes, in their qualities, in the things that they do, right? وَكَذَلِكَ الْخِنْزِيرُ مَذْمُومٌ فِي صِفَاتِهِ وَلَيْسَ بِمَذْمُومٍ فِي خِلْقَتِهِ. Likewise, even the pig. There's nothing wrong with the pig. It's a creation, but it is blameworthy in its qualities. When it's eating and it's just consuming and it's filthy and it's just rolling in its own filth, it's blameworthy in those qualities. وَقَدْ أُمِرَ ابْنَ آدَمْ بِأَنْ يَكْشِفَ ظُلْمَ الْجَهْلِ بِنُورِ الْعَقْلِ. The son of Adam was commanded to reveal, to expose the darkness of ignorance with the light of the intellect, out of fear of fitna in every situation. This light of intellect, he says, he expands on it more in his Mishkat al-Anwar, whereby he looks at the ayat nur, the ayah of light. And he says that the word misbah, right? Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, mathalu nurihi ka mishkat, fiha misbah. The misbah there, which is a lamp, he says that that is the lamp of the intellect. It is with the lamp of the intellect that ignorance and the darkness of ignorance is dispelled. Out of this fear of falling into and getting caught up with fitna. And this is the nature of this world of causality. There's always an occurrence, whether on a micro level or a macro level. And there are certain things that you can deal with on a micro level. Certain things that you can overcome, you have a forbearance for, you can easily solve them. Sometimes it's just instinctive, you don't even think about it. You get up, go by your routine, for example. You go and pour yourself a cup of coffee or tea in the morning. The mug slips from your hand, it falls, it breaks, there's a spillage. It's fine, you can deal with it. It's not something that's going to overpower you and drive you insane and send you to the hospital. No, you can clean it up and you're done. That's a fitna. It's a trial on you because it's delayed your overall progress. It's created an issue here that needs to be dealt with. Sometimes the fitna can increase in intensity. You might burn yourself with that coffee, right? Now you've got a bigger fitna to deal with. It's actually causing you pain. And in some instances you can bear it, in some instances you can't bear it. How much tolerance do you have? That all depends on your inner self. Sometimes the fitna is just too much to control. The coffee maker short circuits, it causes a fire. Now you have something bigger to deal with because there's now damage occurring. And in some instances, people can't handle it. It's all about the endurance. In most cases, the fitna that Allah puts in your way is meant to test you. It's really meant to push you to the limits to see how much can you hold yourself, how well have you disciplined yourself to survive this and come out, even though you might be scarred, injured, hurt, but you've come out intact. You didn't lose it. You didn't go insane. You didn't, get into a state of kufr and disparity and all these blameworthy qualities. Even though you were hurt, you still came out intact. And what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. That's that word that he used in the beginning, jild. And this is the genius of Ghazali. This is just because he was a master of language. Jild is an interesting word. The term jalada means to endure. Jalad is endurance. Jaluda is how steadfast a person is. How much can you hold on? And the beauty of this in the metaphysical aspects, if you take for instance the hadith in Imam Nawawi's Arba'in, it's a beautiful hadith. Ibn Abbas is the one who recounts it. And the Prophet gave him some words of advice. Right? He told him, Ya ghulam, inni u'allimuka kalimat. I'm going to give you a few words of advice. Further along the hadith, he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْأُمَّةَ لَوْ اجْتَمَعَتْ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَنْفَعُكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَنْفَعُكَ إِلَّا بِشَيْءٍ قَدْ كَتَبَهُ اللَّهُ لَكَ. This is a very important piece of advice, especially considering the fitna that we're facing today. Because whether people want to admit it or not, there is an agenda behind this entire circus that has been created. Definitely. And that agenda is not a good agenda. It's an agenda of harm. It's an agenda of corruption. But this is where you find your nasiha. This is a fitna. Some people can tolerate it. They can bear it. They have the forbearance, the steadfastness. Some people can't. Those who have a fragile heart, they can't bear it. They will either react, go out and rebel in the streets and so on, or they will succumb, right? They will go into their, okay, fine, just do it. Let me just get it over with. And others are holding on steadfast because they know that it is a trial. They will hold on for as long as they possibly can. This is where you get your nasiha from. If the Prophet of Allah is saying that if the entire nation, the entire ummah, the whole world wants to get together and harm you, they will not be able to harm you except if Allah decrees it. If Allah has ordained harm for you, only then you will get harm from it. وَإِنِ اجْتَمَعُوا عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَضُرُّكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَضُرُّكَ إِلَّا بِشَيْءٍ قَدْ كَتَبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ. Sorry, the first, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ الْأُمَّةَ لَوْ اجْتَمَعَتْ أَنْ يَنْفَعُكَ. If they want to benefit you بِشَيْءٍ with something, لَمْ يَنْفَعُكَ. They will not be able to benefit you with anything except what Allah has decreed for you. وَإِنِ اجْتَمَعُوا أَنْ يَضُرُّكَ بِشَيْءٍ لَمْ يَضُرُّكَ إِلَّا بِشَيْءٍ قَدْ كَتَبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ. If they want to harm you with anything, they will not be able to harm you except with what Allah has ordained for you. And he said, رُفِعَتِ الْأَقْلَامِ وَجَفَّتِ السُّحُفِ. The pens have been lifted and the suhuf, the pages are dried. This has been ordained. In another hadith recorded by Imam Al-Tirmidhi, similar wordings, but he said, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَا أَخْطَأَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُصِيبَكَ وَمَا أَصَابَكَ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِيُخْطِئَكَ وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ النَّصْرَ مَعَ الصَّبْرِ وَأَنَّ الْفَرَجَ مَعَ الْكَرْبِ وَأَنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. He said that, know that whatever has missed you, if there was an atrocity and it missed you, understand that it was not meant for you. And the same thing applies to a benefit, an opportunity. You missed an opportunity. It wasn't meant for you. Leave it. And likewise, that which struck you, that fitna which occurred on you, that thing, that moment that happened to you, that was meant for you. In that moment, it was meant for you. And it was meant to test you. Did you pass the test? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And he said on that, understand that victory only comes with patience. You don't get victory out of rash action, out of foolhardiness, running into the fire, picking up the phone. Oh, we have to do this. Did you hear this one said that? We have to put him in his place. Oh, so-and-so Sheikh said ABCD. I have to expose him and refute him on YouTube and Instagram. Otherwise, he's going to lead the ummah astray. It's not your duty. It's not your job. And you're not going to achieve it through that. Victory comes with patience. Do some sabr. There must be something you missed. Recognize here that this is a moment of fitna. You cannot understand a fitna when you are in the fitna. You have to wait until it has passed, and then you can self-reflect. You can look back and analyze and try and understand what happened, why it happened, and what did you do about it, and what you should do about it now. Likewise, relief will only come with affliction. You cannot experience relief if you haven't experienced affliction. Like they say, there can be no peace without war. That's their justification for war. But it makes logical sense. You can't be looking for relief if you haven't actually gone through the grind. What are you relaxing from if you didn't go through the pain? And similarly, with every difficulty, there is ease. The ease is with the difficulty. The solution is always in the problem. Your joy is in the sorrow. Your sorrow is in the joy. Khalil Gibran has a beautiful poem on that. He says that when one is sitting with you on the couch, the other one is waiting for you. And likewise, when you're sitting with the other one, this one is waiting for you. Your joy is always going to be waiting for you when you are in sorrow. And your sorrow will always be waiting for you when you're in joy. He says, look deep inside you, and you will find that the thing that brought you joy was once upon a time your sorrow. And still look deep within you, and you will find that which brought you sorrow was once upon a time your joy. The cup that you drink in, the clay cup that you're drinking in, once had to go through a fiery flame to become what it became, to fulfill that purpose. It had to go through a hardship so that it could serve its purpose. So this is the nature of this world. And in order for you to navigate the fitna, you cannot have your ghadab and your shahwa do the analysis and to implement the strategies and to have things in place. You're not going to solve anything that way. You're only going to compound the issue. You will only be adding to the fitna. You need to have your aql, analyze the situation, take a step back, and then figure out what to do next. There are moments where it is imperative or strategic to make a move, but there are moments when doing nothing is the greatest strategy. There are moments when you have to say something, but there are moments where silence is better than saying something. You need to evaluate that. And you can only evaluate that when your aql is sharp, it is intellective, and it has the knowledge with which to make the right decision. Okay, so then he says on that, كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ما من أحد إلا وله شيطان ولي شيطان وأن الله قد أعانني على شيطاني حتى أسلم. I think Abu Hamza, you're familiar with this hadith.
Yes.
Yeah. He says, the Prophet ﷺ, as he said, that everyone has got a shaitan. Everyone has a demon. And I also have a demon, except that Allah has given me control and power over it, such that it has submitted. Some ulama say it became Muslim. Some ulama say it fa'aslama. In another riwayah, fa'aslama means he submitted, the demon submitted. Some ulama say that this is an actual demon, like a real shaitan, a jinn, whom they call a qareen, that is a companion, qarinan linnas, a companion to humankind. Everyone is born with one. Some ulama more towards the philosophical side of the interpretation, they say that this is the demonic quality that, like Ghazali is talking about. Everyone has a demonic quality, and the Prophet also had a demonic quality. Wallahu alam what it's talking about. The point is that everyone has this lower element, whether it is an actual shaitan or it's just a quality. It's there, right? And it's there, and it's going to continue trying to confuse you and create doubt and lead you astray. In a beautiful incident with Aisha radiallahu anha, it's in Sahih Muslim. I think it's in Bukhari as well. There was a time when the Prophet was leaving her house at night, and Aisha felt jealous because she thought he's going to go to one of the other wives, and this was common amongst them, the Prophet's wives. They did get jealous amongst themselves. It's human nature. So he noticed that, and he asked her, "Malaki ya Aisha, what's the matter? Aghirti? Did you become jealous?" And she said, وَمَا لِي لَا يُغَارُ مِثْلِي عَلَى مِثْلِكَ. Why would I not be jealous of someone like you, of having you as my husband? And the Prophet ﷺ said, أَقَدْ جَاءَكِ شَيْطَانُكِ. Did your demon come to you? In other words, I'm flattered that you would feel that way, but it's still a demonic quality. It's still something blameworthy, and it can manifest and go out of control if you do not control it. It can result in other issues. And so she asks, وَمَعِيَ شَيْطَانٌ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Do I have a demon? And he said, "Naam, everyone has a demon. وَمَعَ كُلَّ إِنسَانٍ. Every insan has a demon. Everyone." He said, "Naam. وَمَعَكَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Even you have a demon?" "Yes." "Naam. وَلَكِنْ رَبِّي عَانَنِي عَلَيْهِ حَتَّى أَسْلَمُ. But Allah has given me control over it, and I was able to subdue it. It submitted." But everyone has that. Everyone has these negative qualities. The point is to control and channel them in the right way. Not to let them go out of control. This was an exemplification that Aisha, it was human nature for her to feel that way. It wasn't out of malice or because she was evil or she had an intention or she had an agenda on her mind. No, it was a natural thing to feel that way. And he gave her a premonition. He is saying, be careful of it. Don't let it go out of control. This is your demon coming to you. Did your demon pay you a visit? أَقَدْ جَاءَكِ شَيْطَانُكِ. Did your demon come to you? Did he pay you a visit? This is what it is, right? So then he says, Al-Ghazali says, وَكَذَلِكَ الشَّهْوَ وَالْغَضَبْ. Likewise, the shahwa and the ghadab, يَنْبَغِي أَنْ يَكُونَ تَحْتَ يَدِ الْعَقْلِ. They have to be under the command of the intellect. فَلَا يَفْعَلَ شَيْئًا إِلَّا بِأَمْرِهِ. So that they don't do a thing, a single thing, they don't do anything without his command, without its command. فَإِنْ فَعَلَ ذَلِكَ صَحَّ لَهُ حُسْنُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. If it's able to do that, if you do that, the resultant will be that you will have good, sound character. وَهِيَ صِفَاتُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. And that those are the attributes of the malaika. وَهِيَ بَذْرُ السَّعَادَةِ. And that's the seed of felicity. So if you want to cultivate your felicity, your contentment, then seek out those qualities that are angelic in nature. And the way you're going to cultivate those qualities is if you place your mind in control of your desires and your emotions. وَإِنْ عَمِلَ بِخَلْفِ ذَلِكَ. But if you want to do, if it contradicts that, if it goes against that, the other way around, فَخَدَمَ الشَّهْوَ وَالْغَضَبْ. And the aql ends up serving the shahwa and the ghadab. وَسَحَ لَهُ الْأَخْلَاقَ الْقَبِيحَةِ. Then the resultant is going to be vile and vice, evil, ugly, repulsive, insolent. It's going to be negative. وَهِيَ صِفَاتُ الشَّيْطَانِ. And these are qualities of the shaitan. These are demonic qualities. وَهِيَ بَذْرُ الشِّقَاءِ. And these are the seeds of damnation. فَيَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُ فِي نَوْمِهِ كَأَنَّهُ قَائِمُ مَشْدُودَ الْوَسْطِ يَخْدِمُ الْكَلْبُ وَالْخِنْزِيرِ. This will eventually become clear. It's going to manifest in his dreams as though he is subservient or is in submission or is in bowing down to the dog or the pig. Ultimately, this is going to result in your dreams. And this is going into dream science. You will not this is going to be like the most extreme aspect of this dream. And he's going to explain why. Because he says later on, وَإِنَّمَا يُبْصِرُ النَّائِمْ فِي نَوْمِهِ مَا صَحَ فِي بَاطِنِهِ. In your dreams is where you actually see your true reality. Because you're actually seeing yourself in the dream. In the initial stages of whereby the ghadab or the shahwa is in control of you, that will manifest in your dreams where you will see yourself either coveting to something you desired or coming out with all this rage, perhaps towards somebody that you had an altercation with. You will see yourself in that mode. You'll find yourself either fighting somebody, beating up someone. And that's part of the healing property of the self as well, because some of these things, some of these issues, they often cannot be resolved in the outward sense, in the real world. And in order to reconcile this, to bring some sort of a balance to the human being, so that because those emotions or those desires, if they're bottled up too long, they can cause harm, which is why he says you shouldn't suppress them completely. You shouldn't kill them off, they're necessary. Astaghfirullah. And they have to vent, they have to come out, they have to be manifest in some way. But you need to channel them in the right way. If you're not able to deal with something in the real world, then oftentimes you will dream about it and the self will try to reconcile that issue in the dreams. And if it's not able to reconcile it in the dreams, it is going to keep on suppressing it. And then eventually it is going to have some sort of manifestation either towards the mental state of the individual, getting stressed out of unnecessarily, not able to figure out why I'm stressed, what's causing the stress, or it will manifest in some sort of illness towards the body, because your body's immune system now, instead of dealing with the issues it is supposed to be dealing with on a daily basis, is now going to be diverted to trying to keep the body at optimum for the soul, because the soul is no longer in control of the body. This is you're mentally incapacitated. Question from the ladies: what about having dreams? What about having nightmares of a previous emotional trauma? That's exactly it. If So for instance, you had an altercation with somebody, and in that altercation, number one, you didn't really want to have that altercation. It was against your will. So you were forced into it one way or another, either forced into it by peer pressure, or forced into it by necessity, or forced into it by pure ego. That's the worst. If you're forced into it by ego and you don't win, that's really damaging to yourself, right? And so you enter into this altercation, but then you find that the fight is too much for you to handle. You bit off more than you could chew. So you couldn't fight or finish or win that fight or that altercation in that moment. And you stifle it. You bottle it up. You don't want to talk about it to anybody. You don't want to vent it out. You don't even think of finding a channel in which you can let it out somehow. You keep it bottled up inside, and what's going to happen is that it will result in your nightmare. You're going to dream about it, because if you don't resolve it in the real world, you don't deal with your problems in the real world as and when they occur, then the soul will have to purge that memory somehow, that feeling that it could not reconcile somehow, because it causes distress. The heart is thrown off balance. It's agitated. It needs to be able to let it go somehow. And so you will dream about it. You will see it in your dream. In some way, shape, or form. Some people will see it literally that way. They might actually be beating up the exact same person they were having an altercation with, or they will see it in some symbolic form. And if unfortunately this becomes a manifest characteristic of the individual, whereby they're always aggressive or they're always indulging, they will eventually see themselves worshipping a pig or a dog, as Ghazali says. That's the most now. You will actually see that you are subservient, you're worshipping a pig or a dog. I hope that answered the question. If there's a follow-up, just write it in there. How would you deal with it if it is beyond your control? The amount of control that you have is really based on how well you evaluate the situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that He does not burden a soul with any more than it can handle. So the fact that it has happened means that it should be something that you can handle. Now, a lot of people go out into the real world to deal with the real world when they haven't actually prepared for it. This happens a lot in terms of even marriage, for instance. People get married out of that mode of attraction. They have a crush, right? It's just love running rampant. But they haven't actually thought about what marriage itself entails. They go into that mode, they go into that contract in that boyfriend-girlfriend sort of a mentality, and they think everything is just going to be handy-dandy, hancy-fancy. So long as we love each other, we just keep buying each other gifts and we do nice things to each other and marriage is fulfilled. No, that's not how it works. Marriage is not just about the attractiveness. It's about how well you're going to work together as husband and wife and how you deal with the problems. In that instance, you really have to understand each other on a much more deeper level. And there's a greater level of tolerance that has to be put in place between the two of you. You need to be able to preempt that, think it out in advance. This, Ghazali says in the Book of Knowledge of the Ihya, this is the higher intellect. It's not the learning process. So taking marriage as an example, you can't study for a marriage. You can read all the books that are there as advice and all that, self-help material. There are tons of hadith, there are fuqaha who have written on the matter. Ghazali himself has written. One of the books in the Ihya are the etiquettes of marriage. You can read all that. But the higher intellect level, the fourth level, is the intellect that, number one, suppresses its lower self. So long as you do that, suppress your anger and suppress your desires, then in the situation, you will be able to think clearly. And you will be able to deal with the situation accordingly. If it requires physical force, you will be able to see whether or not physical force is necessary here. The person is too strong for you, then your mind knows, your heart recognizes, this is a fight I cannot win physically. Maybe I can walk away from it is even a good option as long as the heart is content with walking away. But it has to be an intellective decision that the mind makes. The mind has correctly analyzed the situation, evaluated all the options and picked the best option. So even if it's walking away and everybody is booing you for walking away, It doesn't affect you because you made a conscious decision by yourself, by your heart. Your ego didn't make the decision, so your ego wasn't hurt. Your heart made the decision. It's what you wanted, and you're content with that. In many other cases, the issue can keep on arising, and so you eventually learn your dynamics. This is a chessboard, right? The other person makes a move, you make a move. They make a move, you make a move. You eventually find the strategy that will win you the game. I don't know if that answered your question. Not from the perspective of anger or confrontation, but sadness that comes from something beyond your control. How do you deal with it? Sadness coming from beyond your control is something you have to identify. Is it really sadness? Or is it something that is just puncturing your ego? This is what you have to really think about. This is the self-reflection. You have to evaluate from within yourself exactly where is your sadness coming from. Is it something that Allah has put in your way as a test, or is it something that your ego caused to happen? Because if your ego caused to happen, then it will cause you anguish. Because your ego is rampantly high. It wants to win. And the less the possibility of winning, the more the trauma on you. In this instance is where the heart has to override the ego. The heart has to put it in control. But if it is something that you have recognized that Allah has put in your way and is giving you sadness, then in that sadness is your joy. So long as you persevere through it, you will find your felicity at the end of it. This is what he says. Eventually, the robe of honor is going to descend on you. So you have to identify which one is it exactly. This is your self-evaluation. This is tadabbur. It is to look back. It is to reflect on yourself. Okay, let's end there then, inshallah. If there's any questions, maybe we can just get back together on Wednesday and do it again. Like start with the questions first. So let's end there then, inshallah. سبحانك وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين بارك الله فيكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.